So it's 2 weeks until Fates officially releases in English, and I've got a lot of people asking me what I thought about certain details that have been revealed about the localization lately. And I will say, I am very glad I held off on making a video about it until now. Because, like I predicted, the Kotaku article was kinda wrong and did sorta spread misinformation. So, a while back, we started getting articles all over that were hinting at the face-touching minigame, as I will always refer to it as, because, well, it became a running joke of mine. The face-touching minigame in Fire Emblem Fates was being completely axed from the English version. Now here's something that might surprise you. I saw this coming. I saw this coming a mile away. I was very suspicious that none of the English trailers for this game ever showed the face-touching minigame. That immediately just got me thinking, I'm wondering if they've done something with it, because in the Japanese version, they did show the face-rubbing minigame pretty much front and center in quite a few trailers, and it did feel a little odd to me that English trailers didn't show it at all, so I was suspecting, you know what, maybe they've got rid of it. And, honestly, my original prediction was that they'd reveal that the face-rubbing minigame was completely gone from the English version, and that the Fire Emblem community would rejoice. They would all love the fact that it was gone. Because most of them, at the time, thought it was disgusting, pandering to otakus, and basically making this series feel more like it was turning into a waifu simulator. All points that did seem pretty valid. I seriously thought people would be glad to see this mechanic go, but then the moment this was announced, everyone was up in arms suddenly about censorship and cut content. Really? That's the only thing that I got annoyed at in this whole controversy. The fact that the fandom just could not make up their minds. Before, the fandom almost unanimously hated this mechanic, and suddenly when it was removed, people started defending it. It really didn't make much sense to me. My opinion was always that, optional or not, it was colouring people's perceptions of the game in quite a bad way. Even I couldn't really take it fully seriously, and was intending to play it completely for laughs if it did make it into the English version. I did have one or two concerns about it being gone, but then we found out very recently what actually happened to it, and I honestly think that really... The whole thing was overblown. I'm not going to show the actual video clip here because that would be stealing Polygon's content, but basically Polygon.com recently showed a video of how the skinship mechanic actually works in the English version, and to me it seems like a very good compromise. The 3D model of the character is still there, they still say dialogue, you still get the support bonuses, and presumably, I heard that you could get items out of this in the Japanese version, presumably you still get those items as well from this. All of that is intact, you just don't actually touch their face anymore. So, Kamui the Face Toucher is now Kamui the Face Looker. Yeah, I'm gonna have to call this mechanic face-looking now. But honestly, I actually think this is quite a good compromise. It takes out the more uncomfortable elements of this that people had, while still keeping the voice dialogue and the 3D models that are definitely a lot of assets that should not be cut out of the game. Really, those were the only two things that I was worried about when I heard that the face touching was gone. The fact there were a huge amount of 3D models that would go wasted, and the fact there was a huge amount of voiced dialogue that would also go wasted. Thankfully, both are intact, so really, I don't have any worries about this anymore. I think this is pretty much fine, personally, though it does mean that I might have to get my blind reactions to some very awkward lines when I do get S support with people. That's going to be interesting, though I doubt some of the lines will be as extreme as they were in the Japanese version. I have been told some of those lines, and that does sound like something that could definitely get the game rated higher than T in America, but that also could be overly liberal fan translators as well. Again, unless you have the actual Japanese lines, I can't really make a judgment about it, because I'm always suspicious of fan translators. They like to spice things up sometimes. And they like to make things a little bit more adult than they were originally, in some cases. They've been doing that for years now, in both games and anime. So anyway, the main reasons I was worried about the dialogue being gone is apparently this minigame makes up the vast majority of the voice dialogue in the game, or at least the fully voiced lines rather than just the voice grunting. So I wouldn't like that all suddenly being gone, and I also have read, but I haven't gone into specifics because I've been avoiding spoilers, but I have read that some of the characters' lines in this minigame actually reference plot points, like they're foreshadowing towards certain things, even the characters' deaths on the opposite route. So I would be really angry if things like that were gone, but thankfully they're not. So to me, this feels like a perfect compromise, and I'm completely fine with this change. There are some people who are still making a fuss about it, but really, they've removed one aspect of this mechanic, but the mechanic itself is completely intact. And again, the 3D models are intact, the fact they're more intimate if they have higher support ranks is intact, so I really don't see much reason to complain. Aside from the actual stylus interaction, this whole thing is not changed from the Japanese version. Honestly, I sometimes feel like the anti-censorship crowd these days doesn't quite have its priorities right. I probably shouldn't say too more because I might get horribly flamed, because these days if you're not anti-censorship on the internet then you're absolutely the incarnation of pure evil, but I mean, I am against some forms of censorship, like for example, this in the American version of Awakening. This is completely stupid, is censoring something that didn't really even need to be censored, and totally fails at censorship in the first place because it makes this look even more lewd than it did before. Yeah, nice job there. But I can see people being angry about things like that, and I dread what they're going to do to Camilla's one in that Paradise Scramble thing, but that's, well, we don't know about that yet. So yeah, this I'm okay with being mad about, but things like the Xenoblade Chronicles X controversy, where just the outfits of one character among over 20 were censored, and for some reason people suddenly think that entire game is ruined. I mean, really guys, censorship is nowhere near as bad as it was back in the Super NES days, back when you couldn't say kill or die in a Nintendo game, and a lot of the early Final Fantasies had their plots horrendously butchered because of this. Or the fact you couldn't reference alcohol, and so you had things like Chrono Trigger side quests involving pouring soda on someone's grave. Yeah, I'm glad those days are behind us. That's pretty much all I'll say on this issue for now. But the second thing I want to talk about in the video is the official Fire Emblem Fates website has opened up, and with it we know a lot more details about Localized Name, so I thought I'd give my opinion on a few of those. Before that though, I need to give a warning, although this is a bit late since many of you will probably have already looked at this website by now. The English website for Fire Emblem Fates contains things that may be considered spoilers, at least to people like me who are avoiding any pictures of characters who were not shown in Japanese pre-release materials. In particular, do not look at the classes section for the Nor route, because they show a character who, well, yeah, is probably a spoiler, and I annoyingly did see. I don't really know the context of that character at all, but I do know what they look like now and their class, so thanks for that website. Speaking of which, don't watch the My Castle video in the gameplay mechanics section, because that one spoils a couple of second generation characters. Again, thanks for that website, thanks a lot. Thankfully, I had already been spoiled on one of them, but the other one named Nina, I had never seen before, and I'm very annoyed that I got shown that. Not only that, but I got a brief glimpse of their dialogue, from which I can guess their class, and from which I can easily tell who their father is. So, I now know that. That's annoying. I also may have an idea as to that character's personality as well, given stuff that I've read on TV tropes. Anyway, moving on to opinions on localized names. First up is Lazlo. I know this one spawned quite a lot of memes, but I honestly don't mind this name all that much. I think it's a very good localization of Lazward, which sounds like a bit of a stupid name, but Lazlo is a legitimate name, so... See, to me, I think this is a good decision if you just had the name Lazward in isolation and wanted to make it sound better in English. Though, on the other hand, There's another aspect to Lazlo that I feel they missed the point with in the localization, and yet they actually did succeed with the localized names of the other two characters who totally aren't Awakening characters. Their English names, Selena and Odin, do sound quite a lot like their, well, let's just say the English names of the characters. They totally aren't. Heck, I mean, when I saw Odin in the Japanese version, I thought that actually looked closer to Owain than his actual Japanese name, so that was kind of odd. But then you have Lazlo. Lazlo is very clearly supposed to be similar to Azure, which is Inigo's Japanese name. Lazlo doesn't really seem that similar to Inigo all that much, and for that, it just feels kind of weird compared to the other two, which clearly are. I actually feel like there's a prime case of missed opportunity here, because you know what name really would have worked with Inigo's localized name? Montoya. I know it's kind of a joke name, but in a lot of ways it actually would kind of work. Most people would catch the reference to Inigo from Awakening there, so yeah, I always wish they used that as his localized name, but sadly they didn't. Anyway, moving on. I guess also on the North side we have Benny. Yeah. I did anticipate that Benoit would get his name changed, because apparently he shares his name with a wrestler who murdered his family, so definitely a good thing that that changed, but Benny? It's just the most comically unthreatening name for a soldier ever. It's just, I can barely say it with a straight face. We just got this character joining our army called Benny. It's just, I don't know what to think about that. Like Benjamin or even Ben would have probably been better, but I guess it does fit the fact that he's a lot more, gentle and timid than his exterior suggests, but still, Benny, I find it very hard to take that name seriously. Now on to the Hoshido characters. Now, there are a few people who got the U's from their names removed. Those I don't really bear mentioning because the name is pronounced roughly the same way anyway. A U after an O in Japanese just signifies a long O sound. Like, it's just... Japanese has ways of signifying long vowels, and that's one of them, but English doesn't really do that the same way. In fact, an OU in English could be pronounced a number of different ways, like ow, that really aren't the way it's meant to be pronounced, like Saizo and Kagero, and Ryoma. Notice the way I'm saying the OU sound there. That's the only way OU is pronounced in Japanese. So, really, getting rid of the U honestly makes it more likely for English speakers to pronounce them the same way. But we're not onto that, we're onto this guy who, they pulled a Shenko from Darkstalkers and changed a foreign name into a completely different but still foreign name. Thing is, I actually kind of like this name better than Tsukuyomi, because really, I didn't think Tsukuyomi fit this guy very much. I mean, it's the name of a Japanese moon god, and it often sounds very ominous. It's used in a lot of the times it's used in Japanese media, it's meant to signify something ominous or evil. So, yeah, I didn't think that Tsukuyomi really fit this guy. Hayato actually does seem to fit him a bit more, actually, so I kind of like this change. Speaking of other changes that I like, she's not on the website, but apparently Crimson's name has been changed to Scarlet. I really like this because Scarlet means basically the same thing, but unlike Crimson, Scarlet is a legitimate name. So I think that's one of these localization changes where the localized name is vastly superior to the original. Also, apparently a character from Hoshido named Yugiri got their name changed to Reina. Now, I would normally comment on this, but I have no idea who Yugiri is, and I don't want to know because spoilers, so please don't tell me. Though from that one preparation screen clip, they do seem to be a Pegasus-type class, but that's all I know. And speaking of spoilers, if you're concerned about spoiling characters from this game that haven't really been officially revealed yet, you might want to skip ahead in the video now. I'm about to discuss the localized names of two characters who are 2nd gen and technically spoilers, so be aware of that. Okay, spoiler discussion in 3, 2, 1. While I'm on Hayato, I might as well mention his child and one of the few children characters I know about because they were revealed relatively early due to them being a representative of same-sex marriage, and that would be his child, Totally Not Tharia. Her name has been changed to Rajat, and this, I have mixed feelings on this name. On the plus side, they actually managed to get a legitimate name out of anagramming Tharia, which is impressive in and of itself. The downside, it's an Indian boy's name. So, not only does it not exactly fit the culture of Hoshido, it is also a boy's name. So that's kind of an issue, but I do admit I give them props for actually getting a legitimate name out of anagramming Tharia. So I am kind of fine with that, but it still doesn't really fit Hoshido all that well. And speaking of which, this would have been another inadvertent spoiler to me had I not been spoiled about this character already due to somebody in the comments on one of my videos having them as their avatar, which was a little annoying, but I do admit the existence of a Totally Not Tharia implies the existence of a Totally Not Cordelia and a Totally Not Gaius, though I don't know what Totally Not Gaius looks like. So, yeah. So, Totally Not Cordelia is called Kale Dory. Which, well, the Dory is a legitimate Japanese name, I guess, which would mean bird in Japanese, so I like that. But the first part, yeah, I feel they could have put a lot more effort into making this name sound more Japanese. When I was thinking about this myself, how they would do it, I was thinking to turn the C's to K's and the L to an R. And I was thinking of a few things, like Ridiakor and things like that were a few things that came to mind, but, I mean, this is okay, but I honestly think they could have done a bit more to make it sound more Japanese. Thankfully, they're really lucky with Gaius, because you can get a lot of legitimate Japanese names by anagramming Gaius. In fact, even Usagi is an anagram of Gaius, and seeing as a Totally Not Gaius will likely be a ninja, Usagi meaning rabbit I personally think is not a bad name for a ninja, so, I mean, that might work. Though I think Usagi is a girl's name. I mean, other things like Sugai, you can get a lot of things out of that, so I'm not worried about that. Now, while we're on the topic of spoiler characters, I should probably talk about this one character who Nintendo of America has stated they would be editing her supports. Yes, I know about this character. Thanks to the controversy, this is the one second-gen character that I have completely spoiled myself on every facet of their character. I know their class, I know their personality, I know a lot of their supports. Yeah, they're the only person I'll do this for, I promise, but I was just trying to get an idea of the controversy and whether or not it was a mistranslation. Thankfully, there is a Cuntopia article that was posted recently that gave a fantastic analysis of this issue that I highly recommend reading. Really, I have the exact same opinion as that article. All of the controversial themes that came out of that support were not intended to be there. They were just taken out of context by people just posting part of the support, but not all of it. Though I do admit the drugging part without consent should not have been put in. I would have been okay with it if he actually told her, like if they agreed on the whole potion plan. If it was something that they mutually agreed on, I would have been maybe kind of okay with it. But the fact that it wasn't, that he did it without her knowing is just, that's a bit creepy. Though, to be honest, from what I've heard about this character, I think that they're an incredibly stupid character that should never have existed in a Fire Emblem game in the first place. And I would honestly be fine if the localization pulled a Gregor and completely rewrote her from the ground up. Normally I hate that, but in this case I'd actually approve of it. We also have the names of a few DLC chapters. For the most part, I'm okay with all of them, except for the experience one. Seriously? Boo Camp? That almost sounds like a 4Kids episode title. That's just gives me horrible 4Kids flashbacks, so don't like that one. Also, Beach Brawl. I'm a little annoyed they lost the reference there, because the Japanese version had that episode called Paradise Scramble, referencing the localized titles of the Awakening beach chapters. So the fact they've lost the reference there is a little bit not so sure about that. Also, apparently the Japanese one apparently referenced and in fact made some light jabs at the Awakening English localization. I'm wondering what they're going to do with those in the localization of this game. Then we have Ghostly Gold, Museum Melee, and Royal Rumble, all of which are alliteration, but the main reason why I want to talk about these is the localized name of, Ugly Bandit Incest Brother. So, yeah. There's something, well, yeah, this name is quite disturbing to me, for reasons that I'm gonna leave until the actual playthrough. Trust me, I think you're all gonna laugh when I reveal this to you, but yeah. When I saw this guy's localized name, I was like, oh god, no, why? Again, I'm gonna leave this as a surprise, but it's gonna be hilarious when I actually do tell you. So overall, like some fans, there are a few localized names I'm a little iffy on, and a few that I really like. This sounds familiar to me. Oh right, the exact same thing happened before Awakening came out. And you know what? People got over the localized names pretty quickly. I find it really bizarre that people are threatening to boycott this game just because some names have changed in the localization, when, back when Awakening first came out, there was a huge uproar over Stal and Sully. Their names in Japanese were Sol and Soiree, which were referencing day and night, and there was a huge uproar over the change in the localization. Everyone just hated Stal and Sully as names so much. Longku got a similar amount of hate because well, I mean, technically speaking, it wasn't really a localization because you could get that out of his Japanese name, but most people preferred it as Ronku, so when it came out to be Longku with an apostrophe, people were like, huh? But here's the thing, people got used to those pretty quickly. There isn't that much hate on Stal, Sully, and Longku for their names anymore. So, I feel like once this game's been out for a while, the same thing will happen. After all, it's not like Fire Emblem hasn't drastically localized names before. Let me give you a brief rundown. Asaray. Yes, really. Eric. Yes, the Japanese name lacks an A. Lofa. Chap. Sometimes localized names are a good thing. So, yeah, best not to get too angry about this kind of stuff. Fates is coming up soon, and before my playthrough, I plan on making a frequently asked questions video, just to answer a few things that have very often been coming up in comments before I start the game. So, until then, well, I'll have some more videos of my current playthrough to tide you over for the next 2 weeks. But when that moment comes, I'm gonna be putting out a lot of Fates videos, so I look forward to it. See you then.